For many families, Christmas is a happy and exciting time to spend with loved ones. However, for this family, a shocking incident caused people to question for years what really happened to the Sodder children. On Christmas Eve 1945 in West Virginia, George Sodder, his wife Jenny, and 9 of their 10 children were home celebrating Christmas together. At 10 p.m, the younger children were so excited that they asked their mother if they could stay up later, to which she agreed, as long as the 2 eldest sons that were still awake, 14-year-old Maurice and 9-year-old Louis, remembered to do their jobs before going to bed. George and 22-year-old John and 16-year-old George Jr. were already asleep following a long day of working with their father. Jenny then took 3-year-old Sylvia upstairs with her and went to bed, while the others stayed up. At 12:30 a.m, Jenny woke to the telephone ringing downstairs. When she answered, there was a woman on the line whose voice she didn't recognise. The woman asked for a name she wasn't familiar with and then weirdly laughed down the phone. Jenny told her that she had the wrong number and went to return to bed, but she noticed that the curtains weren't drawn downstairs, which the children would usually do. She assumed the children had returned to the attic where they usually slept, so she closed the curtains, turned off the lights and went back to bed. At 1 a.m, she was awakened again, but this time by the sound of an object hitting the roof. But after hearing nothing else, she again went back to sleep. Half an hour later, she woke to the smell of smoke and found that the room that George used for his office was on fire. The fire was seen to be originating from the telephone line and the fuse box. Panicking, she woke up George, and both parents, along with 4 of their children, Marion, Sylvia, John and George Jr., escaped the house. They frantically yelled to the children upstairs in the attic, but they had no response, and by this point the stairs were covered in flames. In the 1940s, it was so much more difficult to get a fast response from emergency services, and the phone line had been in flames, so they had to run to a neighbour's house to call the local fire department. A nearby driver had also seen the house on fire, but they couldn't get through to the fire department either. Eventually, either the neighbour or onlooker managed to get through to them from another phone in the centre of town. Looking at the incident, it appears to just be an accident caused by an electrical fault. But what makes this whole case a mystery is that when George attempted to rescue the other children, everything seemed to be out of place and unusual. Initially, he attempted to climb the house's outside wall and break a window. However, the ladder that he regularly used wasn't in its usual spot, and it wasn't anywhere to be found. It was later found at the bottom of an embankment 75 feet away. Also, a water barrel which could have been used to help extinguish the fire was frozen solid. So George then tried to move his trucks closer to the house so he could use them to climb up to the attic. But weirdly, neither of them would start, despite them working fine the previous day. With no other option, the family watched the house burn down over the next 45 minutes, assuming the other children had died in the flames. And unfortunately, firefighters didn't respond until later that day. At the time, they were low on workers due to the war and lack of communication. Strangely, when the house was searched at 10 a.m, they found no bones from the other children. Officials believe the bodies were fully burned in the fire, but experts state that human remains still should have been found as the fire wouldn't have been hot enough, and other appliances and materials were found in the rubble still intact. Investigators were able to talk to the mystery woman who called the house earlier that evening, and she had confirmed that she had in fact got the wrong number. The family used private investigators and chased up many tips and sightings for years after, with all of them leading to no answers. It's important to note that George had once made comments about a dictator of Italy which people felt some way about at the time. In October 1945, an insurance salesman had attended the house and warned him that his house would go up in flames and that his children would be destroyed because of the comments he had made. Another visitor had also randomly told George that a pair of fuse boxes would cause a fire someday, which left him puzzled as the house had just been rewired and deemed safe. The children had also reported that the weeks leading up to Christmas, a strange car had been watching them as they returned home from school. A telephone repairman had later told the family that the phone line wasn't burned, but instead it was cut. Neighbours had witnessed a man stealing a block and tackle from the property, and he was later arrested and admitted to cutting the line thinking it was a power line, but he had nothing to do with the fire. But no record of the suspect exists, and it's unclear why he would have cut the lines to steal in the first place. But this may account for the noise that Jenny heard when she woke up that night. One of the weirdest factors of this case is that in 1967, Jenny received a letter in the mail, and inside was a picture of a young man aged in his 30s who had strong features resembling their son Lewis, who would have died in the fire. At the time, Lewis would have been 30 if he was still alive, and on the back was written Lewis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, and some random numbers. They asked a private investigator to look into this with hope he was still alive, but sadly nothing came from it. And unfortunately, that's where the case lies today, with no answers. Due to the time that has passed, George and Jenny later died without finding out whether their children actually died in the fire that night. People have reported sightings of the children all over the country, but it still remains one of the biggest mysteries, with many people speculating they may still be alive. Let me know your thoughts on the case in the comments section, and make sure to subscribe for more true crime stories.